Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. My name is Sean Benson, I'm one of your hosts, and we have a host chat tonight. We love our guests. We love chatting with them. It's the point of this show, but every once in a while we like to regroup, get back with each other, and they're always my favorite because the genesis of the show really was sitting in the back of the car while two of your senseis are chatting away, and I have to be with three senseis that I learn from every single day. So I just want to say how privileged I am to be here and welcome to everybody. We'll get to the format of the show in a sec, but we're going to do slightly longer introductions tonight. And we've shortened those in our normal guest shows. But at the beginning, we used to do a formal introduction for each other. And I think it's good to do that tonight. And I just want to talk about Sensei Randy Dauphin. When I first got to the club, he was a purple belt, immediately becoming a brown right after that. I would say he's the first student I ever noticed. I got to the class, I saw the black belts, I didn't think of them as students. I saw Hanshi Legacy, I knew I was joining for life. It was maybe a week or two after that where I saw a purple belt doing kata with a ponytail. We both had long hair at the time. We didn't become friends that day. We didn't chat much. But the one thing I always clocked was this work ethic. There was somebody who was never coming up in their stances when the teacher wasn't watching. There was somebody who was never looking for a time to chat a little or hang out when there was time to work. And as importantly, there's somebody who always had questions when Hanshi would say any questions about history or philosophy. And I learned so much by your questions, Sensei Dofa. I'm not even sure I've ever said this to you, but I would listen and I'd be like, okay, I really respect that guy and I want to know what he's about. I don't even know the framework in which he's asking, and I try and learn more about that. So, people are watching you before you even know who they are, before they know who you are. And unconsciously, I was watching you, Sensei Dauphin. It was 3 years later where I was leaving Western, and Sensei Legacy said, go train with him. And he pointed, and we chatted a few more times, but again, not a lot. And I went and I met him in a park. I pulled up on my motorbike. He was waiting for me, and I've been his devoted student ever since. And, we chat a lot weekly if we can. If we don't, it's my fault because of work. But I just love that we get to grow together and then we get to grow our minds and our spirit and how we are with people and how we are with each other. And you said something so beautiful to me today. You just said, yeah, if I was saying something where I was off, I'd want you to tell me. And that's obviously what you've done with me for coming on 30 years. And anyways, that's my chat about Sensei fans. This is somebody who day one was somebody to watch for how they did things. And we've been lucky enough to grow into him sharing with me his thinking around how he does those things and help me think about how I do mine.
Thanks, Sean. That's good. And I really appreciate those comments. Very heartfelt. We've done a lot of stuff together for a long time.
A lot of stuff.
You can pick, if I may throw something in here, from the very beginning, you can always pick those students because they have good work ethics. They're just a little bit different than everyone else. You can't put your finger on it, but it's there, and then it starts to grow. You can't always tell from a seed what kind of a tree it's going to be. Some people can, I guess, but after a while, it starts to develop, and you're sure what type of martial arts or tree it is.
Not a very tall tree, but thank you, Sensei.
As long as you smell good.
Right.
Well, and not to make this all about you, Sensei Dauphin, but it is your introduction. Like, of your graduating class of black belts, is anyone still practicing that we know of?
Yeah, Sensei Christian. Me and Jim,
Awesome.
we graded together, and I'm really proud of that fact. That guy still hammered it out. That guy's a stud, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's you, Sensei Fino. You got to introduce Benzo.
Sean Benson. Man, I love to introduce Sean. Sean has been kind of along this journey for most of the time that we've been training together. Not so much in the beginning, but occasionally he'd come to a seminar that I taught, Iaido, or I'd see him at an event. And where this really started to get moving first was when Sean came to our Crucible event at JMAC and got exposed to grappling for the first time. And how cool, Sean, that you've taken that and run with it and now are so accomplished in BJJ, and how our world, I think you've pulled everybody, a lot of us along with you. Now Randy and Robert and are doing BJJ, and I'm doing a lot more rolling in the BJJ world now as well as the judo world. So a small moment in time, as so many things are for us, has turned into a really big thing. Those people that don't know, and I can't imagine there are very many people that watch us that don't know, but Sean, is a pretty well-known actor. And I think, generally speaking, uh, when I think of the things that you've been in, the first and foremost one is always Billy the Kid, because I just love I don't watch these shows because I just don't watch shows, but I occasionally see clips, and I know a lot of our viewers are fans of yours. They love Billy the Kid. I know you were in The Boys, and I think you got started in General Hospital. Is that right?
Well, General Hospital was my first big US gig. There was two Canadian, one was Canadian, one was US and Canada law shows, one called The Associates and Just Cause. But the
Hmm.
first one that sort of went, I was shocked when I'd go to like a bar and a 6'4" bouncer would go, hospital.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude wakes up at 2 p.m., watches General Hospital. That had broader appeal. So that's the first one a lot of people in the States would know me for.
Yeah, and then it's so funny because shows that I have just not on my radar at all. But when I mention The Boys or Tiny Pretty Things, everybody's like, "Oh, they're slobbering about it too." So how cool is that? Anyway, I love you as a martial artist and as an actor. But I spend a lot more time in the martial arts world with you, and I'm just so grateful that we started this show together. I don't know how many years it's been now, 5 years ago, and brought us all closer and helped us learn a whole lot about martial arts.
Thanks, Sensei. I'm really grateful too.
Says Svino, I remember when Sean Benson showed up and said, literally, I remember it was in the park and he came in and he's like, I've decided what I'm gonna be when I grow up. And I'm like, he didn't use those words, but basically. And I said, oh yeah, what's that? And he goes, I think I'm gonna be an actor. And I was like, I was like, yeah, I think you'd be good at that. I didn't actually have a resisting thought. Whereas most people, if they came to me and said, I'm gonna be an actor, I'm gonna be like, you're a fucking loser. You're not gonna do this, right? But and then on the acting front, I remember when Sets Legacy and I went to Buddies in Bad Times Theater to watch him do a play. Um, and if you don't know what Buddies in Bad Time Theater is, you can Google that shit and then you'll know what it is. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And then the big breakthrough, I remember he was having a piss and he got to shake Matt Sundin's hand in a McDonald's commercial. He did that one. And the one that people don't realize it's him is he did one of those I Am Canadian commercials where very sensitive, it was an American guy making fun of how Canadian talks. So Sean hockey jerseyed him, punched him in the face.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the most annoying thing about Sean being an actor is the phone calls and texts that I get because people know that we're associated. So they'll be like, "Hey, I was just watching this show. It's called The Boys, and I think I saw Sean in it." And I'm like, "Fuck off! I don't care." Right? Like I don't care what movie Sean is in. Right? I'm not a fan. Right? But I'm proud of him and happy that because actually that journey Sets Svino and Sets Legacy knows this journey too, right? He is at the highest of highs. I remember when he's in LA, lots of money in his bank account, two Porsches, like all this stuff. And then I remember when he had nothing. And then now he's back. He's got two Porsches at the highest of highs. So he's proof positive that you can go to the lowest of lows and rebuild yourself. Um, Mostly if you have cool people like us around you.
Well, Sensei, I just want to say, we've talked about this even on the show, and you say you're not a fan, and that I know that's true because I know how you mean it, but I can't think of anyone who's been more supportive. Like, there's as supportive, like my mom, but not more. And it's so for anybody listening who thinks that's in any way a slag, there's no one who cares more when I get a part. They just don't care that it's a part. They just care because it's important to me. And I appreciate that very deeply.
Well, I also got opportunities, Sean, from this too, right? So like I rode the same yellow SV 650 that Harrison Ford rode.
Yeah.
I got to ride that one around, and Harrison Ford rode it around too. How many people can say that? They rode the same motorcycle as Harrison Ford.
Hmm.
But and you can Google that shit too. If you're wondering what we're talking about, you can figure out how Sean knows Harrison Ford. But listen, we got to move past this love-in for Sean Benson, and we now need to do some introductions for Sensei Suino and Sensei Legacy. And listen, Sensei Suino always jokes about being at the foothills of senility, and he is. but he's much stronger at those foothills than most people who are at them. And he's so strong, in fact, that all of us went down for his 65th birthday party. And if you're wondering what a 65th birthday party looks like for Sensis Reno, it looks like 65 rounds of hell. Um, and I don't mind telling you, I was sore and tired and bagged for a long time after that workout. So Sensis Reno did first we did 10 3-minute rounds of Iaido. Or yeah, 10 3-minute rounds of Iaido with
15.
15, that's right, because it was 20 of rolling at the end. So
Yep.
15 3-minute rounds of Iaido, which Dan Holland, Sensei, and I were like, hey, we got through the whole set in that time. That was mostly because Sensei Suino didn't give people breaks as much as he said he was going to. He was like, I want to keep going now. So then we would all keep going. And then he wanted to do 15 3-minute rounds of stand-up karate fighting, and I talked him out of that. I talked him down to 2 minutes, which he did. And then we did 15 3-minute rounds of randori. And then we capped all this off with 20 3-minute rounds of rolling on the ground. And listen, he got injured, put an ice pack on his foot for about 37 seconds, and then just limped back out onto the floor and continued to do all the shit that he said he was going to do. And it's one of the things that some people set low goals and fail to achieve them. Sensei Suino is the type of person that sets super high goals, goals that other people, you think you can do it, but you can't. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. And he crushes those goals. And that's my introduction for Sensei Suino. He gives me a lot of inspiration. I know when I'm 65, I'm hoping I can be doing the stuff that he's doing. And I'm working really hard to be able to do that. And I really appreciate that. He's also a great instructor to me, great mentor. Like Sensei Benson, Sensei Suino and I have had some great adventures together. Especially been to Japan, been to Austria, done lots of cool shit together, and really proud of Sensei Suino and really proud to be associated with him. Sensei Legacy, you want to jump in there at all? I can tell
Yeah,
you.
I do.
Come on.
He could possibly be on his way to being North America's sword saint.
Yes.
In the long distance, he's probably the best EI instructor and practitioner in North America.
Well,
And
give me another
I mean,
50 years, Hachi.
I mean, he went to Japan, in Japan, and beat the Japanese for 4 years in a row at EI, their own sword art. So you can't beat that. It's like winning the Olympics.
And I wouldn't mind chipping on for Sensei Suino, like what you're talking about with celebrity, like I didn't honestly, Sensei Suino, I just knew in a vertical way, you to us, how much I appreciated your arts. But since we've been doing this show, I've realized what Hanshi is saying. Like, people are in awe of your art, and it's really nice to see, because it's like that's just Sensei Suino to me. And it's like that's somebody who people recognize as being the best there is. And it's a really beautiful thing to realize just in a very relaxed way that I get to be your friend. And we know that as a club, but like I say, it was a vertical. I didn't have a broad perspective, and this show's helped with that. And it's really nice to see that for you.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Sean, because I say to the students in Kitchener all the time, don't take for granted that you have access to a person like Sensei Suino or a person like Sensei Legacy. You just take it for granted. It's just commonplace to you. And I hear them talk about other people, and I'm like, Sensei Legacy and Sensei Suino are way better than that jackass that you're talking about right now. Like, they're way better than that person. So, but now I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to introduce Sensei Legacy. We just jumped in my truck on last weekend and drove, I don't know, 7.5 hours to go to Montreal, because it was the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame in Montreal. And it was really nice to spend that time with Sensei Legacy on that road trip. There was nobody else. There was just him and I in the car. It was so fun, laughing our asses off, telling jokes, talking about karate, talking about various things. It's just so easy to be with Sensei Legacy and go down the road, do these things with him. It's just, I don't know. It's familiar, right? Like family. It's just feels like something that should be happening while it's happening. But what I want to share with you is, um, Sensei says often, everybody thinks they're a little better than they actually are, but he's actually the opposite of that. He actually is always like selling himself much short than where he actually is. And all you got to do is walk into the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame with him to see the likes of John Terrian, Jean-Yves Thériault, Lauren Bernard, um, just anybody who's anybody, all walking up to him and saying, "Hello, Sensei, how are you? Like, can I have a picture with you?" Like, it was kind of nice to just stand back and see my teacher in that room with those people, and all of them kind of deferring to him as, in my eyes, like one of the most senior karate practitioners in Canada, and probably you're talking about Sensei Suino, like North America, I'd say in the world. Um, and I'll tell you, everybody, this funny story about when we went to Okinawa. When Sensei Legacy and I went to Okinawa, like, I don't know, 15 or 17 years ago, and we were staying on a really high floor of this hotel. I don't know, it was like the 17th or 18th floor. And Sensei Legacy said, "Randy, can you go downstairs and get me a bottle of water?" So I'm like, "Sure, Sensei, no problem." So we didn't actually tell anybody we were going to Okinawa. So up at the top get off the plane, go to this hotel, go up there, come down, the doors open, and there's Ikihara Sensei, Taba Sensei, like all these really high-ranking Okinawan karate practitioners. And I'm like, oh shit, like I recognize all of them. And they just look at me and they're like, they can't speak English. "Legacy Sensei?" I'm like, "Okay," I get my bottle of water and I go back up to the top floor. I'm like, "Sensei, there's a whole bunch of karate masters down in the lobby of this hotel waiting to see you." So that's the type of impact that Sensei Legacy doesn't see that he has when he travels around. Um, People know him. If you have the chance to train with him, even if he just shows you how to do his simple reverse punch, you will be in awe at at that reverse punch, and you will learn so much about that reverse punch. And I had a great time on the weekend, Sensei. Can't wait to do it again. I know we're going to be going to Capital Conquest, so it's going to be so fun. I'm already looking forward to that. Less than 3 weeks away. And actually, we're going to do the fighting seminar at Sensei Suino's dojo in 2 weeks. That's
Yeah,
my intro.
9 days, I was going to mention, right? Practical Fighting Camp, Hanchi's coming down. I love what we've built with that. And we've just built a much larger group over here on this side of the water that understands what Hanchi brings to the striking game. And I'm looking forward to keeping, introducing even more people to that. It's just wonderful. I've never experienced that, right? The reverse punch. Hanchi, your reverse punch is one of a kind. And we're all doing everything we can to try and emulate it.
Like seriously, like 32 years spent trying to emulate it.
That's Benny Allen's punch.
Well, thanks for passing it on.
So, Lacey, what do you want to say about yourself? Do you want to chime in?
Nothing.
I don't know if we did, but did we let our guests know that they can that they
Let's
can
do
and
that
should
right
ask
now. Our
questions?
interviews went so beautifully long. Ladies and gentlemen watching, welcome to our Zoom show. If you're on YouTube, your podcast listening, subscribe, like, share, fight, meet in the comments. We want that traffic. But if you're here on the Zoom channel, we want your questions. And when we do the Zoom questions on our host chat, with your permission, we'd like to bring you on to ask your question. So you're not just a part of our living history through your words, but we get your face, we get your mug, we get your shot in the book. So we'd like that. We'll be bouncing around a lot of topics and questions, but we'd love yours as well.
And one reason I wanted to make sure we teed that up is we got a new guest tonight, a new viewer. Mike Mueller is a longtime friend of mine, friend of my family, hunting buddy, fishing buddy, and I think this is the first time he's tuned in to the live Punch Kick Choke chat. So if you're paying attention, Mike, and not out sharpening your knives or practicing your bow and arrow shots, feel free to ask any questions you want, and if you care to come on camera with us for a minute or two, that'd be great too.
Hanchi, I know you had a question that you wanted to get into the show. Let's start rolling with it if you don't mind.
They called me on the phone the other day and they wanted to talk about martial arts. And they asked me a question: what happened to martial arts since the 60s? Like back in those days, there were such good classical martial artists, really, uh, even out of southwestern Ontario, like Wally Slokey, C.J. Bukowski, Ted Martin, Rick Jocelyn. You could go on and on and on. What's happened to it? Nowadays, you have martial arts broken into sports, and you have people under the age of 16 that are black belts, and you have so many schools opened up that as soon as somebody gets a black belt, they break off from their sensei and go open a club. And so I sort of thought maybe we could run over that. What do you think happened? And that same person, I said to them, he says, oh, I was in Canada lately, and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, the reason you didn't see that is because you didn't come to my club. Because in our eyes, we are still doing the classical arts. Whereas what happened, I believe, is that in the 1960s, when we came out, or Sensei is even longer than that, Sensei Esquino, we were searching for the real karate. We didn't know there was a bad karate. We came out looking to be real karate men. And then I think there was an era there where it was so rough and tumble, and there were no pads for your hands or anything, that the people who just couldn't stand the strict workouts and put up with the strict workouts and demands of the martial arts quit. And with that, the dojo owners started to lose their source of income. And then they started making it easier and easier, and started putting black belts on people, 12, 13, 8, 9-year-olds. And then karate started to go downhill, except for probably, I'm guessing, 15 to 10% of all martial arts dojos in the entire world are not real dojos. And I said that to a great martial artist. I don't want to put his name into this because it's my own making. And he said, Sensei Legacy are being very generous. There's even less than that. Really good classical dojos. So what has happened? We're working hard. We're working hard in our dojos to keep the classical part of martial arts alive. What are the people doing who are giving 8-year-old kids black belts? Because when I started, being a black belt was something that was hard to achieve. It needed a special type of person to even cross over that line to become a black belt. And even at that, I'm sorry to make this so long, but even at that, nowadays, people are getting black belts given to them by somebody who probably gave himself their own black belts, and they're going out and opening up schools, whereas they don't realize that first, second, and third dans are not teachers, they're assistants. When you become a fourth dan, you become a renchi, which is an entry-level master. And then sixth, seventh, and eighth dans, you're a medium level, you are a master, right? You're not entry level, you are a master. And then ninth and 10th dans are grandmasters. So people shouldn't really, if they were, like in England, I think you have to get licenses to get black belts. You know, while I used to not like that, I think I like that idea now. Anybody going to help me out here?
Well, you have to direct the question, Sensei, to somebody.
So the question is, at the beginning, what happened to martial arts since 1960? Why did it take such a dive? Is it because of business? Is it because they had a black belt who is not really doesn't really have the credentials to go out and actually teach martial arts until they're a fourth dan? Is it because of that? Or do they give people black belts who don't deserve it? Why do children have black belts? My old story about you had a 13-year-old daughter who got a black belt and somebody broke into your house at nighttime. Would you send her to the door, take care of it if you were her dad? No, because she is not a black belt. A black belt is somebody who's deadly and understands a lot about self-defense and human behavior.
Why don't we start with you, Sensei Suino, since you do go back to the 60s with the martial arts?
You're muted, Sensei.
Now I'm unmuted. How you like that? It's really interesting that
Make
you know
those mistakes when you're 64.
I can't even remember who you are. um, uh, Judo is, I think, different than classical karate in that way, because even in the 60s it was already a sport. Professor Kano, codified judo originally as a fighting system, but then later as a physical education system. And then the world took over and made it into an Olympic sport and basically a worldwide competitive sport. So when I got into it, it was already governed in that way, that there were fairly universal worldwide ranks, the standards somewhat universal, but we would normally think maybe competition, depending on the rule set, doesn't help with the classical mindset. But what competition has done in judo is it's made it more athletic, more rigorous. If you want to compete in the high levels of judo, you have to be an extraordinary athlete and gifted at the techniques. But it's also kind of it's kept the quality from going down too much, because if you are not one of those people that works really, really hard, you're not going to you can make a showdown inside a dojo, but you're not going to have any success in competitions, and definitely not success in national or international competitions unless you really are really good at judo. So it's sort of a backstop. It keeps you're more creative, I think, in judo in some ways, but it keeps the standards high from a performance level. And when you look at the main governing body of judo at the Kodokan, right, they still maintain sort of old school standards along with the modern sports standards. So I think at least in my experience, since the 60s, judo has always kind of been governed by the sport mentality, and it's less a classical martial art than a modern sport with classical roots, I think, is a way to describe it.
What do you think, Sensei Dauphin?
I think that the market has expanded so much today compared to what it was in the 60s and 50s. There's so many more people training now. Like it's exponentially more. And the evolution of martial arts, I don't know if we go back to Japan, like, yeah, they were hacking heads off with swords. I, does that mean that Suino's not a black belt because he hasn't cut anybody's head off with a sword yet? Um,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think there's more information now. There's more ways. I think there's some baseline things that have to happen for you to call yourself a black belt. Like, I'm not dismissing, you got to be tough. You got to fight. You have to be able to, we've talked about this on this show a lot. You have to be able to pressure test your martial art, period. And, if you're a first or second degree black belt, you should be able to handle the brown belts and down in a physical realm with some degree of confidence, right? But there's been an evolution, right? So, and we've talked about this on the show as well. Like I'm sorry, like I think if you take Demetrius Johnson or you take GSP and you send them back into the 50s and put them in a dojo, I think they're gonna run roughshod through almost everybody standing in the room. Like I just think they're going to. They're gonna dominate. And that's not to say I really look up to Sensei Legacy, Rick Joslin. These people to me are like gods, small G. Um, but they're Sensei, you've even said yourself, there were no systems back then. There weren't People didn't have the katas, they didn't have the information. And now there's a lot of information out there. It's out there, right? And there's different paths to achieve your black belt. I think you actually have to know. I think it's expected that to be a black belt or to be a higher ranking black belt, you have to know a lot more than just being able to handle yourself, right? Most people, and I just said it tonight, most of my green belts are pretty tough. Like if an average street person tries to come on to one of my green belts, they're going to be pretty surprised at what they meet when that person starts mixing it up with them. But we don't let them be a black belt just because they can mix it up against a street person. They got to have a lot more stuff. They got to have a lot more knowledge. Um, and then the last thing I'll kind of say is, yeah, when I look back at my time when I was like a brown belt, I think it was tougher and better, right? But the people today who are honestly and truly training hard feel like their time is now, right? And that's where I take it, right? And I'm just staying focused on me, my students, and what I want them to achieve and the standards that we have in Legacy Sharonu and with J Macchiato. Like I'm just trying to hold ground with those things and not let them slide.
Thanks, Sensei. You know, where I go with it, and if I think about Hanchi's question, look, I wasn't around in the 60s. I came in the early 90s. But the shift I see if I think about our awareness of McDojos, and that's the kind of thing where it's like there's real evidence of something lost. I think in terms of the UFC, and I think of it as this dividing point where, I join and martial arts all have this mystical, wow, you can do certain things and no one quite knows what they are who doesn't do them. But when the UFC comes out, any club that isn't good at fighting and knows that they don't offer the kind of fighting that could hold their own against what we can now see on TV, almost has to amplify the cosplay. They almost have to lean more into the woo-woo and lean more into the, those fighters aren't allowed to eye gouge. Well, you don't think those fighters could eye gouge too? Like they can't bite. Well, you don't think they can bite if they like, so my point is that I do think that some people who aren't fighting clubs could get away with it for a while and still be okay. But eventually they went, fuck, our okay isn't near what people are looking for. So now we're going to sell more of the other. And so if I had to think about where any toughness has been lost, it would be that. I do go with what Sensei Dauphin said. I think that martial arts are better than they've ever been currently. And I think it's for the same reason I said. I call it UFC, but it's also YouTube, where we can now go, well, if your stuff ain't doing that, let's get it to that. And we can steal from here and steal from here. And so I just think your average black belt in any discipline is better than the average black belt 30 years ago. But I wasn't there when you were in the 70s, Hanshi, where the average black belt was somebody who wouldn't have, like the people who left might get black belts today. So I think that's a different idea, but I can't speak to it because I wasn't there.
This wasn't my question. I just related.
Mm.
But I still do think that um, because there are more people, I think you always, every time you spoke about somebody like GSP or somebody like that. You took individuals, but what percent of those dojos of the people are all great like that or hold that standard like Randy says in his dojo it does. That's what I'm talking about, classical dojos. And then there are the dojos that when you see them there, you they do put ads on Facebook and that, and their students are like basically terrible. Like I don't even know why they would do something like that. I'm not trying to put an ugly mask on martial arts dojos. I'm just saying that when you pick a dojo, you're completely relying on the sensei. You have to really make sure that you join a legitimate type club.
Sensei, one thing I would say to what you're saying is And I don't know, again, as Sean said, in the 60s and 70s, I wasn't there. I didn't join until the 80s. But I think if you took the whole of karate, let's just say karate, like let's not talk UFC, kickboxing, anything, just karate, the percentage of really good martial artists was probably higher in the 60s and 70s. Like tougher people who wanted to fight and wanted to do it. Whereas if you took the entirety of it now, there might be as many good people or more than there, but the percentage is grossly skewed in the direction of people who are just shit and not doing it right. Um,
That's right. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, and I agree with that because a lot of the people I see, like I've gone to teaching places where people come to my mat and they're wearing a red and white belt and they're like 70 pounds overweight. They don't look like they've sweat in however long. They can't kick higher than their shin or at all. Like and and don't look like they ever actually could. Like I'm not saying right, like they don't look like they ever actually were able to. So um there's a lot of bullshit out there. I agree. And kids under 16 shouldn't get black belts.
That's
Well,
right.
I think this leads pretty nicely into a question that I wanted to bring in tonight, which is about, we've talked a lot on this show about karate's for everybody, martial arts is for everybody, bringing people along. But at the same time, we also have, guests who are like, no one was even allowed on the floor for the first 2 weeks. They just had to watch. They get it or they leave. And we like those ideas too, and they're important. So at what point when Sensei Dofe, you and I talked a couple weeks ago about if a student's not willing to do what we did to get the rank we got, then maybe they don't deserve the rank. But at what point do you get harsh with that? And at what point do you allow that they're never going to be, let's say, what you are, Sensei Dauphin, but they're still validly on a path? In other words, this goes a bit to what we're talking about with percentages of martial artists who are elite, or if they're not going to be those elites and they wouldn't have got a black belt in the 70s, at what point do you push them hard enough to quit or not?
Are
Or
you,
still floss?
yeah, who are you going
I'll
to?
start with you, Sensei Dauphin.
Everybody's 100% is different, right? And that's what I'm looking for from people. I'm not trying to, I don't even want everybody to be like me. I think that would be a fucking shitty dojo, to be honest with you. Like, I'm not trying to punch cookie cutter black belts a Randy Dauphin mold. I want them to all be their own black belt and give their own 100%. And when I say we do the same thing, I mean like the test and the standard is the test and the standard, and you got to get through it. Um, you're going to go on the floor. If you're getting a black belt in Legacy Shorin-ryu, you're going to go on the floor. You're going to do at least 16 katas. You're going to have to perform them at some level of skill, which should be your highest level of skill. You're gonna have to do a whole bunch of fighting. Doesn't have to be Randy Dauphin fighting, but it has to be your highest level of fighting that you can do. And you're gonna have to stick it out through that until Sense Legacy says, enough. Okay, I've seen enough. And to me, if you quit, then you shouldn't be a black belt. If you're gonna be a quitter, because the people who are running you through that test probably know more about you and your martial arts than you know about yourself.
Mm.
And that's one of the good things about being in a classical dojo is you can hand yourself over to your instructor with trust and know that they're not coming in tonight to say, how can I fuck up Sean Benson? Like, how can I screw him up tonight? No, they're not. They're like, how can I build this person better? How can I add more in? How can I? So that's where I take that. They don't have to be me. They don't have to be you. They don't have to be Sense Legacy. They have to be them, 100% them at the highest level they can be. Then they'll be a black belt. And then if they're that, if they've discovered that about themselves, and you're some like person who thinks you're tough on the sidewalk, good luck. You're gonna find out. It's not gonna matter if they're like a 62-year-old woman or Kenny Ibusazaki would have knocked your fucking block off if you would have grabbed a hold of him and he was not me. He was Kenny Ibusazaki. Legit fourth degree black belt. He punched me. It hurt a lot.
Yep.
All of
Sensei, what's that?
sorry.
Sorry,
All
Chase,
of us, how old was Kenny B. Suzaki?
When he started, he was 65. I think he was 89 when he died.
Amazing.
Sorry, Sean.
Oh no, Sensei Suino, what do you think is that sort of balance between keeping the percentage of real grinders as high as possible while not discouraging someone along the path who's flagging in relation to that?
You know, fortunately or unfortunately, most people who knock on the door, right, who maybe get the brown belt ranks and struggle, most of them self-select out, right? If there are people in the low brown belts that I think are probably never going to make black, then they kind of they sort out because they have big obstacles, and we're not mean to them, but we try to make it very clear what the obstacles are. Hey, listen, this is something you need to work on. Um, and by the way, come to class, take private lessons. We'll work with you on this. Train, train, train. Might take you a little bit longer, but we're there for you. You're part of this family. Let's do this. And if they self-select, okay, like I said, it may be unfortunate, but that problem's taken care of. Then there's a smaller percentage of people that kind of have the stick-to-itiveness to go through that period, which, by the way, I think everybody should go through a period where they struggle, where they maybe before Showdown, certainly at Showdown, where they're presented with the challenges of the martial art, where the standards are very high, and there's only two choices: quit or keep grinding until you get there. Having said that, some people are way more athletic than others, and there's going to be different templates for what somebody as a black belt looks like. It should be really hard. I think the standards should be firm but fair, and I think the exceptions should be few. But I think, kind of as Randy alluded to, we should do everything in our power to try to get them there. As long as they're doing, if there's two oars in the boat, I want them to be rowing theirs at least as hard as I'm rowing the other one for them.
Thanks, Sensei Suino. You know, I was talking to my students last night about something along those lines of I was saying to them, when I'm talking about struggles, I'm talking about stuff that like is hard longer than the length of high school. Like, because I was talking about the idea that, you know, you're in grade 9, somebody's a faster runner than you, but they don't dedicate themselves to running. You'll be faster than them, but not by grade 10, probably by like grade 13, by you first year. And you could see that light in my students' eyes kind of go, right, we're talking about something over real time here. You know, that you come in, you might not be the most gifted, but you will eventually be better. But we're talking longer than the length of a 4 or 5 year arc before the natural talent is superseded. I see you not Sensei.
Yeah, Copeland Sensei says it's not when they quit, or it's not if they quit, it's when they quit. And most of them are going to quit. Most of the people are going to quit. I'm sorry. Like, how do I know that? That's a historic fact. When I joined 36 years ago, I was the lowest ranking guy in Legacy Shiranru.
Right.
The worst, couldn't tie my belt, lowest ranking guy. It's 36 years later, and there's like 4 people that are higher ranking than me now that have been here longer than me. 4 in 36 years. That's thousands of people who have come and gone in that time. Thousands of them, right?
And by the way, it's not always the physical stuff, right? That people select for, right? Sometimes you have conversations with your students about things that, you know, their mindset, their attitude, how they behave in the dojo, you know, what their contributions are. And sometimes those things are harder than the often in physical, and I don't know why. There's some magic in this. Often there's more than one of those things kind of goes together. People that struggle physically sometimes seem to have a mindset challenge. I really believe most of the problems up here. It just, I'm not quite sure how to unlock that for them. But you know, we have students in the brown belt ranks who are looking at that 3 to 3.5 years at brown belt, and that gives them a lot of time to churn their personal issues around, you know.
Well, that's the thing. It's so crazy how often the life is what like we always talk about how martial arts betters your life, but some people's lives can affect their martial arts negatively in a way where, I mean, obviously I was an example of that in my late 20s, but where you just like, you haven't integrated them right, even after a number of years. And so, oh, the wife or the husband or the job or the whatever, or the mental stuff I haven't dealt with that I don't feel when I'm training, but I haven't understood the training has to emanate out into those things.
And I was talking to this with my crew. I may have mentioned this on another episode of the show, but I was talking to this with the JMac crew. Everybody who's a leader at JMac, the 12, 15 people that kind of help run classes and all that, they've all made some other switch too. Besides staying in there and getting through the black belts, they're all people who are now martial artists, right? They define themselves that way. If they don't, they never make it to that. I don't know what the chicken or the egg is, but they never make it to that leadership cadre if they are not already, right? A huge part of their life isn't defined by their martial arts.
Well, before we go to Hanshi, I always think about it. You've got your hobbyists, you've got your pros, and I'll call that even like non-professional, but every weekend comp guys. And then you've got it's just your lifestyle. Like it's you're not a hobbyist, but
Sure.
maybe you're not going, and I don't mean pro as teaching, I mean pro like competitor, but there's a notch barely below that, maybe even above it in some respects, called it's your life, your lifestyle.
I think it
Hachi,
is above it.
what's that, Sensei
I think
Dofan?
it is above it. That's above being a pro. I think. Like,
Because you could be a pro and then quit after you
yeah,
run your.
a lot of them do. They
Mhm.
they just stop training, right? Like that's why GSP is great. He's still amazing martial artist. Right?
Yep. Hanshi, where do you go with this? If we were going to try and grow that percentage so it looks more like black belts the way you thought about them back in the day, but at the same time, not make everybody who's not going to be that quit. What's that balance?
Well, I think right there we're talking about a completely different crew than the majority of crews that are out there. That's basically what I'm saying. All of us, uh, the word samurai means servant, right? And a sensei is a servant of his students. And whilst everybody in our dojos are trying to do the best for the weakest possible person in your dojo, we all treat them equally and everything. We are doing that right. I'm just saying that I think that now, because it's growing so much, and there are black belts and dojos opening everywhere without a real master running the dojo who really doesn't understand. Understand is the key word in martial arts. How can they pass it on if they themselves haven't went that route? They belong to a sensei, and then they get a black belt and they shift and they go start. It's like somebody in grade 8 trying to teach other
Mhm.
people university stuff. That's what I'm saying. I believe that's what happened from the 60s, that everybody is not qualified, and then the quality starts to drop because that person can't teach everyone else the quality because they haven't even been there long enough. How can you teach somebody uh, um, algebra if they're still in grade 2? You can't, right? So that's basically what I'm saying happened. I'm not saying there are not good martial artists and good martial arts schools now, but some of it has went that way. When you look for a dojo, look for a classical dojo. Look for a classical dojo that has roots, and then you won't just find someone who's just dropped themselves amongst everyone else and thinks that he can teach or she can teach. So I totally agree with everybody. It's just that it takes a long time to be a martial arts teacher.
Sensei Dofan, I know you had some more thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's Sensei Legacy. I've said this to you before. That to me is like karate welfare. Like, people who their parents were on welfare, they just go on welfare because that's just normal for them. And then this cycle keeps repeating itself. And if you don't have a good instructor, like, here's a question. Ask your teacher if you go to a dojo, say, hey, yeah, what's it like to get punched in the face? And if they go, I don't know, I've never been punched in the face, get the hell out of there. Like, get out of there as fast as you can. Um, uh, yeah, I think you're right, Sensei, about that stuff. Because even when I started teaching, I was a second Dan when I started teaching, but I was teaching under your guidance and under your supervision. So I wasn't like I didn't break off and start some other thing. And interestingly, as a seventh degree black belt, I still teach under your guidance and under your supervision, which is one of the really cool things, right? Is if you have a real teacher, they're still progressing ahead of you. You never get to where they are, right? You never actually get there. You might close the gap, but they're always going to still be having lessons. And if they don't have lessons for you, you should get the hell out of there and go to another place where they're a little farther ahead of you and they're going to stay ahead of you. Um, and Sean, we've talked about this recently. I think it's not just this, but one of the most important things is will you just continue to show up? And when you show up and you step on the floor, what are you going to do at the time while you're on that hour and a half? Because lots of people show up and put their belt on and their uniform on and parade around for an hour and a half, and not a bead of sweat drops off of their head,
Mm.
right? So you're not actually showing up, you're just dressing up, right? To show up, you got to get on the floor and actually like work, right? Listen to your teacher, try and work on your weaknesses. Um, and sadly, I guess in a lot of dojos, that's not happening. And it's not just karate, it's all the arts.
Um, Hanshi Legacy, I do want to ask you something though about a lot of the teachers we've had on this show who are 50-year, 60-year masters. A lot of them describe, and then I was the brown belt and I took over the club because my teacher quit, or I got my black belt at 21 and they said, you got the club. So those are teachers from back in the day who are now our true guiding lights, our eighth, ninth, and 10th dans. But they at that time were not really knowing what they were doing. So what was the difference back then? Because I agree with you. Like I think when we see that today, I'm like, what? But back then, wasn't that a bit more the norm because of the separation from Japan and Okinawa?
That's exactly what happened to me. There were my original guy didn't know wasn't didn't belong to a classical style. That's what happened to me. But the ones who survived, what did I do? I went and looked for one. I hunted and hunted down. Then I trained with Richard Kim and Benny Allen and then Anthony Sandoval. So I've only had so many teachers, but I had good teachers. So that now that I have something, actually have something to hand down to sixth and seventh and eighth dans, right? Like, what are you going to do if they keep training and you don't keep learning? It's like Randy says, really, they force you ahead. And you have to keep training in order. The martial arts isn't something that you learn. It's something that you discover. If I don't, I worked to get my fifth dan. I worked from a fourth dan 15 years, and I had my nose to the grindstone, right? And martial arts, you're going to be working out someday in any kata, and all of a sudden you're going to stop and you're going to see something you haven't seen before. You're going to go, wow. And it's going to be something small, but it's going to be a bunkai or more than likely a lesson or something like that. And then from that, you'll affect many things in your mind. And if you don't do that, if you don't put the time in, you can stand there, like you said, for 15 years and do nothing. It's not, martial arts are not going to give up their secrets and what they are to you if you don't train. Every single one of us has to discover your art just like the founder, exactly like the founder. So I'm still discovering Shorin-ryu. That's maybe it's just me because there are a lot of more capable persons around than I am. But I love Shorin-ryu. I mainly just do Shorin-ryu because I'm trying to get more of the depth to receive from those same katas that year in, year out, pounding of the katas and being with other martial artists that are going to say one thing that's going to change the flavor of my martial arts. So you still have to go back to tradition if you're going to be anything, because no person who doesn't train under a sensei can get all the information from from Karate Sakugawa right up to myself, because each one puts in they're flavoring sort of into the soup or into the arts. So that's how come it's kept modern today as opposed to like being ancient hockey or like where martial arts has come to today. I also believe that if GSP went back, he would probably kill everybody back in the old days because martial arts has gotten better because there are more minds contributing. At the beginning, there was one.
Yeah, yeah. I love this. It's almost like there's a holy trinity of the martial arts, right? There's the student, the teacher, and the tradition. And you need all of them. You know, Hanchi, you were just talking that as a student, as a lifetime student, we always have to work and we have to try to pull the secrets out of the martial art. Our teacher sets us up for that, right? If they give us the right mindset and show us how to pursue techniques. Obviously, they come from the tradition. Um, but it's so if all those pieces are in place and you have a teacher who is a master for the ages, you know, they'll teach you from beyond the grave. I'm still getting lessons from Yamaguchi Sensei, right? For decades after he passed. Um, Still having those moments, just like you said about a kata. Oh, there's a new move, but also a new realization. Oh, that's what Sensei meant by this, right? And
Yeah.
it's not always technique. Sometimes it's other stuff. It's philosophy or principle as well. So if you have all three of those, then I think you kind of have the whole picture. That's what keeps the spirit of the martial arts alive.
Sensei Suino, I know you had a question for us to kick us into a whole new ball game.
Well, it's not completely different. It's a little bit more fun, and it's a little bit of a 10 question type question. Um, Sean, I'm going to ask you first. And the question is, if your younger self walked into your dojo today, what would they think of you?
Oh, damn. What a great question. Um, Look, I spent a lot of time in this ballpark because of therapy, older, younger selves, different ways of embracing the past, letting go of the past. And, assuming I don't buy crack cocaine in the next 26 hours, I'll be 18 years sober. And depending on what age we're thinking about, I picked mid 20s in my head. I just automatically went there. I think I would be very unconsciously attracted to what I offer. I don't think I'd know why, but I think I'd be like, there's something in this room I need, and I'm going to stick around for it. And I think that guy would, on the surface, reject a little. I mean, if he was brand new at martial arts, not if I'd already been training with Sensei Dofen or something, but I've grown into a life that in many ways has offered what that young guy needed. In many ways, it's just like steps along the path. Like we're existing at the same time. And that guy's a thing I get to use as a bit of a don't go back the path. And I get to be the beacon that got that guy, if you skip the temporal, to here. And I think that guy would clock it. I think that guy would not know why he came back the next night, but he would. So what would he think of it? I think he'd be like, this guy's all right. I could probably take him. Uh, Push comes to shove. But I think he'd unconsciously be attracted to that room. And it makes me emotional to think because it's what got me here is he'd keep showing up even in the hard times.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Hanchi, if your younger self showed up in your dojo, what would he think of you?
Well, so what I'm trying to do, really, what I'm going to say then is really what I hope I'm doing. So this is what I'm trying to do for the students. So I'm really trying to be a deep pool so that when anyone comes in, I have enough knowledge to bring them to where they want to go. And in another eye, I would look for somebody that I could love as much as I fear, because there has to be, two sides to the coin. You have to protect your family, and you have to love your family. So they're two full opposites. You try. I'm trying to, with the deep pool, have all the aspects, and for me to uphold the name of Shorin-ryu during my lifetime. So it hasn't fallen under my leadership. That's it's such a small thing, but it's everything.
I love that. Randy, if your younger self walked into the dojo today, what would they think of you?
Well, I built myself in when I was 18, I was like a punk, right? And I wanted people to think I was something that I wasn't, and I knew I wasn't the thing that I wanted people to think I was, right? While I'm still working really hard, I've put in a lot of time to, you know, with your help, Sense of Suino, and with Sense of Legacy's help, and with Sean Benson's help, I think the 18-year-old person would look at me and go, yeah, I want to be that guy, right? Because that's what I've become. I've become the thing that I was hoping I would become. And I'm still working on that. I know you can slide back and all of a sudden not be that person, but I don't know. I think they would say I'm in a good place. Like I can I can follow this person, and I can say that because I've become the person. So it's like really hard to say that the person would look at me today and say, "Fuck that guy. I want to go over here and do." No, I know who I was when I was 18, and I know what I was looking for when I was 18, and I know what I've worked on over the last 36 years. And so I think they'd be like, this guy's going to be able to help me get like shed this stuff off and get me to the place where I want to be, which is where they are, right? I'm not trying to be an ass kisser here, but when I walked in at 18, and since he was in his early 40s, I was like, fuck, I want to be that guy. Like I want to have that confidence. I want to be able to move like that. I want to be able to lead people like that. I want to be seen in that light, right? Um, I'm just lucky that I always say I'm luckier than Sense Legacy because he never had himself as a teacher, right? I got to have him as a teacher. He never got him as a teacher. So, um, I'm sure those other guys were good, but I wouldn't trade Sense Legacy to go back and trade with anybody else in history ever. Um, so that's just me. Um, I think my 18-year-old self would be like, that's a good karate teacher. He can help me get to where I want to be.
Sensei Suino, what do you think for your own question?
Well, Hanchi, I loved what you said about wanting to find somebody that you can love as much as you fear. That was kind of that was my ticket in, coming into the dojo and watching the martial arts with wide eyes and going, "Oh, fuck yeah, I want to do that." But when I trained with Carl Scott early on, once he saw that I was dedicated and talented, he trained beside me, right? He invited me to work out. We would do push-ups together, do kata together, and I needed that at that time of my life. So I was looking for a leader figure, or maybe not quite a father figure, but something like that. Somebody who I thought was a badass, a father figure, but somebody who would partner with me and help me get better. And if I'm younger and I walk in today, I think I'm even a better version of that, or I try to be. Obviously, we're all human, and I'm certainly as human as anybody. I've got a lot to work on, but when the young people come in, I try to make a positive environment where they can learn to be a badass, have a really supportive community, and that I invite them to become partners if they work hard enough, right? They become a member of the family. And I needed that really badly when I stepped into Asian Martial Arts Studio in 1979. As a little kid, it was a different issue, but I think I would have gravitated towards the older version of myself.
Um, I wouldn't mind doing a fun, quick add-on, and let's go to you, Sensei Suino, then you, Sensei Dofa, and then you, Hunch Legacy. What would your young guy reject? Like, we're talking about this in a beautiful and healthy way, and what a magical thing that we get to become the thing we wish we had. But, Sensei Suino, you're a young guy walking in, and you see you in front of the room. What part would your young guy be like, nah?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I don't think there was anything in the dojo that I would have rejected. But now at this point in my life, the older I get, the more I'm turning away from alcohol and
Mm,
bad habits and negative thinking and all of that stuff. And I think it would have taken me a while to sort that out because I was much more fond of those kinds of things in my 20s. Um, so, off the dojo floor, socializing with a lot of the folks at the dojo, I think, you know, I'm getting less permissive of it in the in the dojo community as well. I don't think it helps people. So maybe I would have rejected that.
What about you, Sensei Dauphin? What would your young 18-year-old be like? No.
I don't think anything, Sean. Like, I mean, that's a tough question. I grew up around a lot of rough, tough people. Like, and when I say I grew up around rough, tough people, I'm talking about people who like used a firearm and shot other people and went to jail, right? Like, I'm not talking about like they were on the sidewalk and they gave somebody a black eye, right? And when I walked into Legacy Shonen-ryu, I was like, these people are fucking way tougher than anybody I've ever met before. Like, period. Um, End of story. And if you don't think so, I don't care. But you know, the first night I walked into the dojo, I saw a 115-pound woman beat the holy living shit out of a man who was like in his, and he was a black belt too. They were both black belts. She beat his ass from one side of the room all the way to the other side of the room and then turned him around and beat his ass back in the other direction easily. Like, we're not talking. And I just sat there going, holy shit. Like, I thought I was tough here, right? Like, I've been around tough people. I've never seen anything like this. And had somebody told me that I was going to see that before I walked in, I would have called bullshit. But
Right.
once I saw it, then no, I was like, I was good to go after that. I don't think I rejected anything after that. Nothing. I just did what I was told because I had goals and things that I wanted to get done. And I can't answer that in an honest way, Sean. Like, I think nothing. I don't think
Yeah.
they would reject anything.
Hanshi, what would your young guy reject about the vibes or actions in your dojo at some point as a master?
I think I would have been scared, uh, just because I'm a very aware type of a person. But I will tell you this, that I wouldn't change anything, and I have no regrets because I had great teachers and I'm still here. So I somehow came from where I was and took all the necessary turns and opened certain doors that brought me here where I wanted to be, still doing this martial art. Before before I did karate, I had a very uh, irresponsible type of life. And the thing that made me stop it all is I said, when I'm 50 years old and I have children, do I still want to be doing this? Some of you know I was just, you know, lived a bit on the rough side. But as soon as I found karate, I found that same brotherhood. And then the day I stepped in the dojo floor, I could feel that my life changing and being welcomed onto the dojo floor. It just changed my whole life. I'm one of those guys who needed it. My mom and dad didn't put me in it. I was looking for it. And once I get in there, I didn't want it to spit me out. So um, I was nervous. I was afraid of the whole thing because I knew that if I failed this, then the rest of my life would be a failure. Like, if you go out to set your life straight and you can't, then you're going to be a failure. So I just bellied up to the bar and went to it.
Um, my answer is a little similar, Sensei Suino, in the sense of like to a bit of what you talked about, like having a quiet leadership style built around health. I think my young guy would have rejected that a little, uh, in the same way that it would have been what he was drawn to. Hanshi, I remember once in one of the early weeks, someone said, "What do you do if someone hits you in the back of the head with a bottle during like a demo question period?" And you went, "I fall down."
Hmm.
But why was I sitting with my back to them? Why was I in that bar in the first place? And then you mentioned, I can't remember what age you were at the time, but you know, maybe you don't need to go to the bar. And in my head, I'm like, I am never fucking not going to the bar. I was 18. I didn't reject, I didn't leave, but in my head, I'm leaving that part. And eventually it was like, yeah, no, why am I at that bar? But I do think Sensei Suino, not in answer my own question, but a bit of what you said, Sensei Suino, I think there would have been a healthy aspect to the general way of living that I advocate for quietly underneath all of it, that would be an ixnay in his little gut. So who knows which one would win out? Who knows which wolf would win out?
That's an honest answer, Sean. I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show. I remember when we recommended Sean for his black belt. It was at the YWCA, and I was driving down there with him, and I said, "Hey, listen, you can come to my house and sleep over tonight if you want, and then we'll go to the Sense of Sandoval seminar together in the morning." He's like, "Nah, I don't think so. I think I'm gonna go out with some friends and I'm gonna party and I'm gonna this and that." And I said, because he didn't know what he was in for, right? And I said, "Well, listen, we could talk about this again, but the offer still stands, right?" Well, the lights were being turned out in the YMCA, and we were kicking Sean in the shower, saying, "You have to get out of the shower and get dressed." Right? And so then finally we got him out, and I got him in my car, and I said, "So Sean, what bar am I taking you to now? Where am I dropping you off?" And he's like, "I think I'll just go back to your house and sleep on your couch, Sensei." You would have resisted, Sean. That was an honest answer. You would have resisted that part of who you are now.
Absolutely. I wanted to be both. And for a sec, you can be, I think, if you're young enough and you're vital enough and certain things don't have a hold. And then at a certain point, it's like, now you can't be both anymore. You got to choose. I don't think
Um, that's a short step to another question I had, which is, and I'll give this to you first, Sean. What's a non-martial arts skill that you've taken into your martial arts or into your bag of tricks? What's improved your or helped your martial arts?
Well, I'll do two because one directly led to martial arts, which was ballet. I danced ballet for 9 years. And in that ninth year, I overlapped with martial arts with karate. And, you know, just the ability to see moves and do them was inherent. I mean, that's part of dancing, the balance, the flexibility, the leg strength that, allowed for fast moves and all that kind of thing. So that was it was a one-to-one overlay. And ballet is a classical art. And I've said this on the show before, Mrs. McLeod, my wonderful dance teacher, she was the first person in my life who basically said, I don't care who you think you are, get in line. Oh, you've showed up late to class, door's locked, we'll see you at the next class. Oh, your uniform's not clean, go home. And no other thing in my life ever treated me that way until karate. So that was a one-to-one shift. But, the way I focus on guitar, I played guitar for years before karate. And you can look like you're good at guitar or you can actually be good at guitar. And what I mean by that is, you can play it so it sounds enough like the thing, or you can actually break it down and practice it over and over until it's technically right, and then can actually soar so far beyond the appurtenance of it. And I know even in my early martial arts, like Sensei Dauphin and I have talked about this, like I had a reflex and an athleticism, but I'm not sure I was ever really fighting for a while, and eventually it was like, no, sit with the technique. I'm still working on this. Sensei Dauphin and I talked about this literally the last time we sparred. It's a note I'm still working on. And so I think the way I approach guitar really, overlaid in that sense of, do you want it to just be close or do you want it to actually be good? And that's just quiet practice home alone. Running scales is like doing kata and basics, but it has its own reward. It doesn't even need to be the song. It's its own joy. I still do it.
And you think that you recognize that on a conscious level, or do you think you were just informed by that when you came into the
I
martial
know,
arts
Sensei, it
practice?
wasn't conscious. I was just informed by it because it's one of the few things I loved that I chose that no one told me I should do, but that I cared enough to be good at through practicing both the technical and the free flowing artistic version, which would be like writing a song or playing a solo. And I was doing that before karate. So it was an unconscious thing that when I look at it, they're very parallel.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Randy, what do you think is a non-martial arts skill that's helped inform or make your martial arts better?
It's hard to say a non-martial arts skill as when you're a martial artist, right? Because
Mhm.
I ride my motorcycle as a martial artist. Like everything I do is as a martial artist. So it's hard to say that, but I'm gonna answer this pretty simple since reading.
Mm,
Like I think reading is one of the things that has helped my martial arts, if you consider that a non-martial arts skill. Um, my love of history, philosophy, politics, I think that's really helped my martial arts a lot. History, looking at things. Uh, I just think it helps with your perspective today when you know things about the past, right? And true things about the past. I'm not talking about the fantasy stuff that people want to talk about, right? I'm not talking about the myths of Matsumura fighting a bull. I'm sure he did fight a bull. Like I'm not saying that that didn't happen, but when you have an eye for history and you look at things and you can read things and cross-reference things, you could take that myth of Matsumura fighting a bull and turn it into something that's pretty real in your brain. Like the smells become real. Um, the snot from the bull becomes real. Like these things become real. And then you can bring that forward into what you're doing today. Right. So that's what I would say. Reading, my love of history and philosophy and politics and culture, right? Like broad cultures, learning about other countries and what makes them tick.
that's really interesting. Hanchi, what's a non-martial arts skill that you think has helped make your martial arts better?
I think possibly, uh, on the beginning level, you have to be very physical. You go in and start doing physical things, stretching, basics. I think making my body do what I wanted to. Because I played a lot of sports. I played hockey, I played football, I pitched ball, fastball from when I was 11 till about 52 years old. And so I can make my body do certain physical things, even though I wasn't very flexible. I did force myself to be, you know, slightly in that area. I could kick above my waist. But I think that was it. The physicality of it. I was a good athlete and I had good timing coordination. So the beginning for me was good. It was easy. And then from there on in, all those other attributes found their way in from my senseis. I think that got me to a good start. I mean, if I would have been afraid when I faced the first, you know, person that was probably, I was a white belt, they were probably colored belts and they would have banged me around or hurt me or something like that. I think that might have deterred me from the whole gambit.
I
But
just
yes, just on a physical level.
I picture you Sensei standing in Harold Warden's dojo and him saying to you, I want you to punch this guy in the head as hard as you can. And you were like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, punch him in the head as hard as you can. Guess what happened? That guy got knocked the fuck out, right?
Well, I
That's
did.
a
I
true
wasn't.
story. That's not a made up story. That's a real story.
I, I thought I didn't know what karate was. I thought I was fighting. So I was. He said that to me because I was a white belt, but he didn't know I was a bit aggressive like that. So
A bit aggressive. Another understatement.
Hanchi, you were pitching fastball at age 52?
no, yeah, in the
Holy
old timers
crap.
league. In the old timers league.
Says
Fuck.
Suino, listen, I was standing on the beach in Rimouski as a brown belt. He was giving me private lessons for my Shodan.
Uh-huh.
We decided to play catch, and he gave me a glove, and he said, "Hold this right here and don't move your hand." and he fucking threw the ball at me, and about like 15 feet
No,
away,
no,
you
no,
could hear
no.
it cutting through the air. Whap! Into your hand. And I was like, God, thank you for trusting your sensei and not moving the glove. Right?
Shit. Oh, outstanding.
What's your answer, Sensei Suino?
Well, I want to, based on some of Randy's comments and what Hanshi said, I realize this is sort of martial arts, but it's not martial arts. I think growing up in a neighborhood where I had to fight like almost every day really helped with my courage or whatever you want to call it, stepping into a competition ring or stepping onto the mat. Like, when you got five kids coming at you who want to kick your ass and you have to fight them and you win or you lose, you go home bruised and you do that, for your entire elementary school experience. Going into a dojo and having to grab somebody's gi and throw them on the floor, get thrown is kind of trivial, right? Or onto a refereed stepping onto a refereed dojo floor and knowing that if somebody scores a point, you get stopped. Um, I think, looking back on it, that's probably why I was never terrified in competitions, because it was just a lot lower. The stakes were lower. And I realize that's sort of martial arts, but I don't know that I thought about it exactly that way before. Like that's maybe where that came from. It's just having this shit scared out of you and beat out of you enough years means that the threshold rises before you get scared by that kind of stuff.
This brings up a quick thought I had, unless anyone else has a bigger, better question. But do you think, I'll start with you, Sensei Suido, do you think that some people just experience pain actually more? Or do you think it's the fear? Because the way you talked about that, I was like, yeah, you're not terrified and you'll get banged up, but there's no fear around it. Like, I don't mind getting hurt. I was a BMXer as a kid. I wiped out. I didn't give a crap. The only thing that bothers me when I get hurt in martial arts, including like like sensitive offense, hit me in the ribs, where I'm just like, I think I'm gonna die, but I don't want to stop. It's only if I'm injured. I don't mind it. Do you think that's an actual sensitive thing, or do you think it's a relationship to the sensation?
Ooh, yeah, probably a combination of the two. I've seen some students that are really sensitive to pain, and the tendency, of course, is to maybe belittle them a little bit, but I don't actually know how they're experiencing it.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, you get hurt enough. I mean, we all see this as adult martial artists, right? If you train for 20 years and you get hurt, bruised enough and break enough fingers and stuff, it becomes trivial after a while. Like the pain it's just pain, right? And maybe if you start real early, you develop a lower sensitivity to it. I don't really know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I was fighting last night, sprayed my thumb on a guy's elbow, and then I was doing some grappling after class, and then I stopped, and it wasn't because it hurt too much. It hurt a lot, but it was like, oh, that'll tend to longer recovery.
Mm.
It was a sense of, ah, crap. If I get that torqued again, that's longer recovery. It had nothing to do with the fact it hurt while doing it. Sensitive fan, what do you think? I mean, obviously some people have a hypersensitivity, but do you think it's the relationship to it or the actual sensation
I
that
don't know.
keeps people
I,
away?
I, I again, I can't answer the question fully. I think it depends on what your drive is. Like, how bad do you actually want something, right? Like, if you want that thing so fucking bad, you'll move mountains. You'll do whatever it is for you. You'll endure pain. History is riddled with what I'm talking about, right? Where people will put their hands on an axe and clear an entire fucking forest because that's what they want. They want that field cleared. They want that thing. Um, so I'm not trying. I don't know, Sean. I can't. Again, I don't know. I can't say what it's like to get hit so bad that you're not coming back tomorrow because you're so alive to that pain. But for me, the answer is you didn't want it that bad then, right? Like, if that's the thing that's going to stop you, and hurt and injured are two different things, right? Like, hurt and injured are two different things, but I've been injured and I've still got, I mean, I started BJJ at 50, hurt my groin, went to the physiotherapist, and he said to me, you're going to need to take 6 to 7 weeks, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm competing in 2 weeks. And he's like, "Is there anything I can do to talk you out of this?" And I'm like, "Nope, there's nothing you can do. I'm competing in 2 weeks, no matter how." And my groin was sore. I couldn't even get in and out of the car. And he's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna do what I can for you for the next 2 weeks, and then I'll fix you after the tournament." Right?
Totally.
Some people would have just quit because they didn't want it that they don't want it that bad. That's not who they are, right? I think the pain weeds people out, I guess maybe.
No, I love that. And you know this, and I don't recommend this to anybody, but in early martial arts, I had a filling, no freezing. I asked the dentist not to freeze it. And I just said, I want to experience in a controlled environment a kind of pain that I could experience out there so I know that I can handle it. And they were like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" So I was like, "Yeah, it sucked, but it was a controlled environment. At any point, the third man in the ring could have said, 'Give me the Novocaine.'" Um, I don't recommend it to anybody, but it was my way of going, I want to know what this is so that I'd be okay with this.
Sean, when I tried out for grade 9 football, I kept making the cuts and I thought, I'm gonna get cut. I'm gonna get cut. I was little, right? I was like 120 pounds, same height I am right now, right? And I remember the last day, the coaches said, "We're playing British Bulldog with full equipment on." And I was like, okay, like I gotta go here. And I remember at one point hitting this one guy and another guy running by, and I like grabbed him by the shoulder pads, and we went down in this heap, and I got crushed underneath these two guys. They get hurt a lot. I can remember it's scarred in my brain. But what I also remember is the head coach, Don Hollerhead, saying, "I like this Dauphin kid. He has total disregard for his body." I made the fucking team. Okay. So
That's definitely an 80s story for sure. This kid will hurt himself. He's in. Hanchi Legacy, what about you? Like, what do you think in terms of, you've seen and probably hurt by 10 times more people. Like, what do you think is the difference between the physical actual pain or the relationship to it that makes people back
Well,
off?
when you see street fights, guys who don't know how to fight, the fight only lasts as long as the one guy hits the other one with a good punch, and that's it. He's never been hurt before, so you have to sort of feel pain in order for you to understand what it is. I mean, real pain. Um, so it's like when I start teaching a fighting class, I always say to them, so that they're aware of it, expect to get hurt.
Mhm.
So your mind is set to expect that, right? So when you get hit a few times and it hurts a little bit, you sort of get used to it, and then you know that when you go into a fight, say you're competing at a high level, then you just override that. Even if your finger gets broken, the adrenaline's flowing, you just override it. Unless it's something like, you can't breathe anymore, or your leg's broken, you can't move or something like that. You can override it just through being familiar with pain.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the way I look at it. I mean, if I have a broken finger, I can still go. If you're defending your family and you have a broken finger, you're not going to quit,
Yeah.
right? So it's just a matter of where you are, what's going on, and how strong a mind you have.
I have to sometimes tell my students, I'm like, once you know your mind's tough enough, now you have to not injure yourself because you're so tough.
that's
Like,
Sometimes, yeah.
your mind's good now. Now you got to take care of the Sensei Sweeto, do you want to say goodnight for us? I tend to, but time is real. It's fucking 10 o'clock. Is there anything anybody wants to say, or do you want to take us home, Sensei Sweeto?
Well, I don't really have the list of helpers memorized, so maybe
Oh
you ought
my
to do
God,
that,
of
and then I
course.
can
Okay,
wrap
I'll
us
dig
up.
that up for us. Yes. I got it right here in my favorites.
Go, and then
I'd like to
I'll
say
take it
thank
home.
you to Robert Schlumsky, Justin Shea, Andrei Sedashev, Josh Kitchens, Christiana Landolt, Drita Giuliani, Stavros Stavroulias, and Emily Ruth Driscoll for all your help behind the scenes, for keeping you all out there apprised of our show. Thank you to them behind the scenes.
Excellent, excellent. Listen, thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please join us on these chats. We are always willing to take your questions as long as they're not shite, as Sean is fond of saying. But what a privilege. We've been doing this for almost 5 years now, I think, and it's an amazing opportunity. We've met so many people. We've got so many great guests, and always look forward to Thursday nights, especially the host chats.